The first-class cabin hummed with the quiet luxury of a late-night flight. Champagne clinked, screens glowed, and passengers settled into their plush seats. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp voice cut through the calm. "Sir, you need to leave this seat, now!" All eyes turned to Keanu Reeves. Yes, the Keanu Reeves sitting by the window, his trademark leather jacket slung over the armrest, looking unfazed. The flight attendant, young and brash, stood over him, arms crossed, insisting he didn't belong. Was this a mistake? A power trip? Or something wilder brewing at 300,000 feet? What happened next flipped the cabin and the internet upside down. Buckle up, because this story's about to take off, and trust me, you won't see the landing coming. Got a guess who's right or wrong? Drop it in the comments, I'm dying to hear. The first-class cabin of the red-eye flight from Los Angeles to New York buzzed with the usual low hum of privilege. Passengers sipped drinks, scrolled through phones, or flipped through magazines, their attention drifting in the dim light. Near the window, Keanu Reeves sat quietly, his trademark leather jacket draped over the armrest, a simple baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He wasn't drawing attention, just another guy on a plane, or so it seemed. The peace didn't last. A flight attendant, Miss Carter, strode down the aisle with the confidence of someone who'd never been questioned. She stopped at Keanu's row, her sharp eyes narrowing. "Sir," she said, voice clipped and loud enough to turn heads, "you need to leave this seat and move to economy, now." A ripple of surprise swept through the cabin. Heads popped up, conversations paused, and a few passengers exchanged quick glances. Keanu didn't flinch. He lifted his gaze slowly, meeting hers with that calm, steady look fans knew from 100 movie screens. "I think I'm in the right spot," he said, his voice low and even, no trace of irritation. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his boarding pass, and held it up. "First class, seat 3A, printed in crisp black ink." Miss Carter barely glanced at it. "There's been a system error," she snapped, crossing her arms. "You're not on my list. You don't belong here." The accusation hung in the air, bold and unshakable. A businessman 2 rows back leaned toward his wife, whispering, "Does she not know who he is?" Another passenger, a woman in a sleek blazer, frowned, her fingers hovering over her phone as if ready to record. Keanu tilted his head slightly, still unruffled. "You might want to double-check," he suggested, handing the ticket over again. Miss Carter's jaw tightened. She wasn't budging. "I don't need to check," she said, her tone rising. "This is first class, and I say who stays. You're moving." The cabin shifted, a murmur spread, some curious, some annoyed. A guy in a hoodie smirked, muttering, "She's got guts, I'll give her that." But guts weren't winning her any fans. Keanu stayed silent, his expression unchanged, letting her words echo. The businessman's wife whispered back, "That's Keanu Reeves. She's picking the wrong fight." Miss Carter tapped her earpiece, her voice sharp. "I need a supervisor up here. We've got a problem passenger." The word problem landed like a spark on dry grass. Heads turned faster now, phones slipped out of pockets, and the tension thickened. A woman across the aisle scoffed. "Problem? He's just sitting there." Another passenger, a middle-aged guy with glasses, leaned forward. "Lady, you're the one making a scene." Miss Carter ignored them, her focus locked on Keanu, who still hadn't raised his voice or moved an inch. The supervisor arrived, a woman in a crisp uniform, her tablet glowing as she approached. "What's going on?" she asked, glancing between them. Miss Carter pointed at Keanu. "He's not supposed to be here. System glitch. He won't leave." The supervisor took the boarding pass, scanned it, then looked at her tablet. Her brow furrowed. "This is his seat," she said firmly. Miss Carter blinked, her confidence flickering for the first time, but she didn't back down. "I don't care," she shot back. "He's disrupting my cabin." The murmurs grew louder, and the cabin braced for what came next. The supervisor stood firm, holding Keanu's boarding pass in one hand and her tablet in the other. "This is his assigned seat," she repeated, her voice cutting through the growing buzz in the first-class cabin. "There's no glitch. Mr. Reeves belongs here." Miss Carter's face tightened, her arms still crossed like a shield. She wasn't ready to fold. "I don't care what your tablet says," she snapped, her tone sharp enough to make a few passengers flinch, is causing a disruption. "He's making me feel threatened." The words landed like a bombshell. Threatened? Keanu Reeves, the guy who hadn't raised his voice or even shifted in his seat? The cabin erupted into a mix of gasps, murmurs, and outright disbelief. Keanu's eyes narrowed slightly, just a flicker of something harder beneath his calm exterior. But he didn't respond. He didn't need to. The passengers took over. The businessman 2 rows back whipped out his phone, the camera light blinking red as he started recording. "You're kidding me, right?" he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Threaten? He's just sitting there." His wife nodded, her lips pursed in disgust. Across the aisle, a woman in a sleek blazer stood up, her voice rising. "You're the one disrupting everything. He hasn't done a damn thing." Miss Carter spun toward her, eyes flashing. "Ma'am, sit down. This doesn't concern you." The woman laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Oh, it concerns all of us now." The tension spiked. A group of 3 passengers near the front, 2 guys and a woman in their 30s, jumped in, their voices overlapping. "She needs to go," one shouted. "Fire her on the spot," another added, jabbing a finger toward Miss Carter. "This is insane." The third pulled out her phone, joining the businessmen in filming. Miss Carter's confidence wavered for a split second, her gaze darting between the growing chorus of outrage and Keanu, who still sat silently, his baseball cap casting a shadow over his face. But instead of backing off, she doubled down. "If he won't move," she said, tapping her earpiece again, "I'm calling ground security. This is a safety issue now." The cabin exploded. "Safety issue?" the businessman barked, his phone still rolling. "You're the only threat here." The woman in the blazer stepped into the aisle, hands on her hips. "You're harassing a passenger who's done nothing wrong. We all saw it." A guy in a hoodie near the back laughed out loud. "Bro, she's toast." She picked a fight with John Wick. The reference drew a few chuckles, but the mood was anything but light. Phones were out everywhere now, 5, 6, 7 of them, capturing every word, every gesture. The supervisor raised a hand, trying to regain control. "Ms. Carter, step aside, we'll handle this." But Ms. Carter shook her head, her voice climbing. "No, he's defying me. Look at him, just sitting there, staring like that. It's aggressive." Keanu finally moved, just a slight tilt of his head, his eyes locking onto hers. It wasn't a glare, not exactly, just a steady, piercing look that seemed to cut through her bluster. Miss Carter froze, her breath catching for a moment. She took a step back, then recovered, her hand flying to her radio. "Ground security, this is Carter in first class. I've got an uncooperative passenger refusing to comply." The supervisor's face paled. "That's not necessary," she said, grabbing Miss Carter's arm. "Stop this now." But it was too late. The cabin was a powder keg, and she'd just lit the fuse. The businessman leaned toward his wife, his voice low but audible. "She's done. This is already online." He was right. The first video, 30 seconds of Miss Carter demanding Keanu move, his quiet resistance, and the passenger's outrage, hit X with a vengeance. Kit Carter started trending within minutes, retweets piling up like wildfire. "Flight attendant tries to boot Keanu Reeves from first class. Big mistake," one post read. Another, "Imagine not knowing Keanu Reeves and betting your job on it. Rip her career." Someone even slapped a John Wick soundtrack over the clip, the bass thumping as Ms. Carter's voice cracked on screen. Back in the cabin, a middle-aged guy with glasses stood up, pointing at her. "You're the problem here, not him. Resign before you embarrass yourself more." Miss Carter's hands clenched into fists, her face flushed. "I have the right to enforce my authority," she shouted, but the words sounded hollow. The group of 3 near the front started chanting, "Fire her! Fire her!" Others joined in, their voices ragged with frustration. The woman in the blazer turned to Keanu, almost pleading, "Say something, man, she's losing it." But Keanu didn't, he just watched, his silence louder than the chaos around him. The supervisor yanked Miss Carter toward the galley, hissing, "You're making this worse, stop talking." But the damage was done. Phones kept rolling, the chants grew louder, and online the internet was already writing Miss Carter's obituary. "She thought she could out-Alna Keanu Reeves," one tweet read. "She thought wrong." The intercom crackled to life, cutting through the chaos in the first-class cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain," a steady voice announced. "We ask that everyone remain calm and seated. We're handling a situation and will be landing shortly." The words were meant to soothe, but they barely registered. Miss Carter, her face red and her hands trembling, ignored the plea entirely. She pressed her radio harder against her ear, her voice rising over the captain's. "Ground security, this is urgent. I need backup in first class. Uncooperative passenger, potential threat." The supervisor lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. Carter, stop it!" she hissed, her eyes wide with panic. "You're out of line." But Miss Carter yanked her arm free, shouting, "He's defying me! This is my cabin!" The situation spiraled beyond control. The cabin was a mess of noise and motion. Passengers yelled over each other, their frustration boiling over. The businessman, still filming, shook his head in disbelief. "She's lost it," he muttered, zooming in as Miss Carter waved her radio like a weapon. The woman in the blazer shouted, "You're the threat, not him." The group of three near the front stood up, their chant of "Fire her" morphing into a jeering roar. "Get her out! Get her out!" they bellowed, fist pumping. Others joined in, clapping and stomping, the sound bouncing off the cabin walls. Miss Carter spun around, glaring at them. "Sit down, all of you," she barked, but her authority was gone. Shattered by her own stubbornness, the supervisor grabbed her shoulder, this time with force. "You're done here. Move. Now." Miss Carter resisted, digging in her heels, but the supervisor wasn't asking. She pulled her toward the galley, practically dragging her as the cabin erupted in applause. It wasn't polite clapping, it was raw mocking, a wave of scorn that crashed over her. "Bye-bye," the guy in the hoodie called, waving sarcastically. "Good riddance," shouted the middle-aged man with glasses, his phone still up, capturing her exit. The businessman's wife smirked, whispering, "She dug her own grave." Through it all, Keanu Reeves sat motionless. His baseball cap tipped low, his eyes following Miss Carter's retreat with that same unreadable calm. He didn't clap, didn't smirk, didn't say a word. Just watched as the storm he'd unintentionally sparked swallowed her whole. The supervisor shoved Miss Carter into the galley and slammed the curtain shut, but the damage was irreversible. Phones stayed out, videos streaming live to X, TikTok, everywhere. The first clip, the one with Miss Carter calling Keanu a threat, hit critical mass. Kick Carter exploded online, racking up millions of views in minutes. "Flight attendant picks a fight with Keanu Reeves and loses badly," one post declared, already at 500,000 retweets. Another, "She called him a threat? Bro, he's the chillest guy alive." The public wasn't just watching, they were judging. "Arrogant idiot," a commenter wrote. "Fire her and ban her from flying," demanded another. Someone edited the video with John Wick music. Keanu's silence synced to gunshots, Miss Carter's rant drowned out by cheers. The internet smelled blood. Back in the cabin, the applause faded, but the tension didn't. Passengers swapped phones, showing each other the latest posts. "It's at 5 million views already," the businessman said, scrolling. "She's trending above a hurricane." The woman in the blazer leaned toward Keanu, half laughing. "You see this? She's toast because of you." He gave a small nod, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips, but still said nothing. The captain's voice returned. "We're beginning our final descent. Cabin crew, prepare for landing." The timing wasn't coincidence, everyone knew it. This was damage control from 300 feet, a desperate attempt to cap the chaos, but online the mob was just getting started. She thought she could flex on Keanu Reeves, a tweet read, pinned with a crying emoji. Now she's begging for mercy. Mercy wasn't coming, not yet. Ms. Carter's career was crashing, and the world was watching it burn. The plane touched down with a jolt, wheels screeching against the tarmac, but the real turbulence was still unfolding. As the seatbelt sign blinked off, passengers in first class stayed put, eyes locked on the galley curtain. Ms. Carter emerged, flanked by two airline officials in dark suits. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line, her earlier bravado gone. She didn't look at Keanu, or anyone, as she was escorted down the aisle and off the plane. The businessman lowered his phone, smirking. "That's a wrap," he muttered. A few passengers clapped again, softer this time, more out of habit than spite. Keanu adjusted his cap and stood, grabbing his jacket, his silence still deafening as he stepped into the aisle and headed for the exit. By the time the jet bridge connected, the airline's response was already out. A statement hit their website and X. "We sincerely apologize to Mr. Reeves for the unacceptable treatment he experienced. The crew member involved has been terminated, effective immediately. We're investigating to ensure this never happens again." It was swift, corporate, and final. Passengers spilling into the terminal checked their phones, nodding at the news. "They had to fire her," the woman in the blazer said, scrolling. 10 million views in an hour. "She's a liability." The businessman grinned, showing his wife the latest hashtag stats. Kick Carter was everywhere, the video now at 15 million views, memes flooding feeds with captions like "She messed with John Wick and found out." and career terminated in 4K. But the story didn't end there. As Keanu disappeared into the crowd, a new wave of chatter erupted online, and it wasn't all aimed at Ms. Carter. A vocal minority shifted the spotlight. "Why didn't Keanu stop this?" one tweet demanded, racking up thousands of likes. "He just sat there while she got destroyed. That's cold." Another, "He's no hero. He let the mob take her down." The backlash grew, painting Keanu as a bystander who'd watched a woman's life implode without lifting a finger. Supporters fired back. "He didn't owe her anything. She dug her own hole." The divide deepened, dragging Keanu into a messy debate he hadn't asked for. Miss Carter didn't stay quiet either. Hours after the landing, she posted a shaky video from what looked like a hotel room, her voice trembling but defiant. "I've been slandered," she said, staring into the camera. "That man refused to cooperate, and the passengers turned on me. I followed protocol. I'm the victim here." She claimed the airline threw her under the bus to save face, that the system glitch was real, and that Keanu's intimidating stare justified her reaction. The post went viral, splitting the narrative further. Some bought it, "Maybe she's right, Keanu could have spoken up." Others trashed it, "She's delusional, that video doesn't lie." The clip of her rant now topped 20 million views, fueling the fire on both sides. In the terminal, passengers from the flight lingered, feeding the frenzy. The guy in the hoodie showed his friend a meme. Miss Carter's face photoshopped onto a sinking ship, Keanu steering away. "Bro, she's done," he laughed. But the woman in the blazer frowned, overhearing a couple nearby. "He should have de-escalated," one said. "He's Keanu Reeves. He's got the power to stop this." Her husband shrugged. "Or maybe she should have checked the damn ticket." The argument echoed online, where Keanu was now both a legend and a villain. "He's too chill," one critic tweeted. "Letting her crash and burn isn't noble, it's apathy." A defender shot back, "He's not her babysitter. She's an adult who screwed up." Keanu's name trended alongside Miss Carter's, the video's view count climbing past 25 million. The airline's apology did little to calm things. People wanted blood or redemption, not PR fluff. Miss Carter's plea video hit 1 million views, her supporters calling for a boycott, her detractors demanding she own it and disappear. The businessman checked his phone one last time as he headed for baggage claim. "This ain't over," he said to his wife. "They're tearing each other apart now." Keanu, meanwhile, slipped into a car outside, oblivious or indifferent to the storm he'd left behind. The line between hero and bystander blurred, and the internet was drawing it in real time. The storm raging online showed no signs of slowing. Kit Carter hit 30 million views, Miss Carter's plea video climbed past 2 million, and Keanu Reeves remained the internet's lightning rod. Hero to some, apathetic bystander to others. Then, 2 days after the flight, he broke his silence. A simple post appeared on his rarely used X account. "She was wrong, but everyone deserves forgiveness." 5 words, no hashtags, no fluff. It dropped like a pebble into a churning sea, and the ripples were immediate. The post racked up 1 million likes in an hour, retweets flooding in from fans and strangers alike. "Keanu just ended the war," one user wrote. "Man's a legend, forgives her after all that," another added. The tone shifted fast. Anger gave way to pause, then debate. "If Keanu's letting it go, maybe we should too," a viral reply suggested. The airline, scrambling to ride the wave, issued a follow-up statement that same afternoon. "After review, we're offering Miss Carter reinstatement with training as a second chance to serve our passengers." It was a calculated move, less an apology, more less line. The press jumped on it, headlines flipping from "Flight attendant fired" to "Keanu's mercy sparks rehire offer." Online reactions split again. Some cheered, "Good for her, everyone messes up." Others scoffed, "She doesn't deserve it after that stunt." Miss Carter trended once more, but this time the venom softened. Keanu's words had cracked the mob's armor, turning a pile-on into a redemption arc nobody saw coming. People started posting screenshots of his tweet over her video, captions reading, "Maybe she's not the villain after all." Then came the twist. Late that evening, Miss Carter responded, not with a video, but a short written post on X. "Thank you for the offer, but I'm done. I'm leaving aviation for good, time to start over. No excuses, no tears, just a quiet exit." The internet blinked. "She said no?" A top comment read, pinned with a shocked emoji. "Didn't expect that," another admitted. Her rejection stunned everyone, supporters who'd rallied for her second chance, detractors who'd bet on her groveling. even the airline, which stayed silent after her post. Views on the original video topped 35 million. But the narrative flipped again. Ms. Carter wasn't begging to be saved. She was walking away, head high on her terms. Respect, one user wrote. She owned it and bounced. Keanu didn't comment further. His driver picked him up from a studio lot that night, the city lights streaking past as his phone buzzed with notifications he ignored. He'd said his piece. 5 words that turned a scandal into a lesson. Back at airline HQ, execs scrambled to spin the rejection, but the public had moved on. Miss Carter deactivated her account the next morning, vanishing from the digital battlefield. A week later, a tabloid claimed she'd enrolled in a coding boot camp, unconfirmed, but it stuck online as her redemption coda. From flight attendant to techie, a meme joked, pairing her face with Keanu's Matrix grin. The internet chuckled and let her fade. And that's where we land, this wild ride of pride, chaos, and grace. Keanu's forgiveness didn't just save Miss Carter from the mob. It gave her a door to step through, even if she chose a different path. It's a story about how fast we judge, how loud we yell, and how quiet mercy can shift everything. Was she wrong? Sure. Did she deserve the firestorm? Maybe. But Keanu reminded us second chances matter even when they're not taken. A quick note, this tale's fictional, spun from imagination under YouTube's fair use rules. Any resemblance to real folks is pure coincidence. So, what do you think? Was Keanu the hero, or should he have spoken sooner? Did Miss Carter earn her fresh start? Hit that like button if this twist got you. Drop a comment with your take. I'm reading every one. Subscribe and ring the bell for more stories that'll keep you guessing. Thanks for flying with us. See you in the next one.